Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum viewers. I'm your host S.M. Hali, presenting another edition of Defense and Diplomacy. Pakistan and the US enjoy a strategic relationship, but it is one of the most unique relationships because there has been a number of ups and a number of downs. But the important thing is that somehow it persists, and if goodwill continues and the focus remains, because both Pakistan and USA are fighting a common enemy, which is terrorism, and are aimed at eliminating terrorism from this world. But this program today is not about terrorism. It is about also in the field of energy, because Pakistan is energy starved, as is any other developing country, and Pakistan needs energy, and US is a country and an ally to which it looks forward to it. But let me not steal the thunder from our very eminent panelists who are present in our studio today. We have with us George Perkovich of the Carnegie Endowment for Peace, and he's a very well-known figure, being a literator and an academic. Welcome, sir. We have with us Michael Crippon, who also needs very little introduction, who is well-known internationally. Welcome, sir. Thank you. We have with us Brigadier General Feroz, whose recent publication, Eating Grass, of course, has just hit the press, and it talks about Pakistan's nuclear prowess. Welcome, sir. And then we have with us Ambassador Tariq Usman Haider, who is a familiar face on my shows. Welcome, sir. Let me set the ball rolling and start with you. If you could just set the parameters for which are the areas where Pakistan and the US can cooperate in the field of energy.
Thank you, Hali Saab. Well, as you said, the relationship with America is a strategic relationship. Both sides want to grow it and make Pakistan economically, otherwise stronger. Our biggest problem these days is electricity and power shortages. The policy of America is to help in this regard, and on the tactical level, they're doing very good work. They have a public sector development and distribution for the public sector and power sector improvement program, which is a very major task. They're helping with wind energy, they're helping with hydropower, they're encouraging alternative energy. So I think on the tactical level, they're doing very well. On the strategic level, while they think that nuclear power for India is good, but for Pakistan, it's not an area for cooperation or even discussion. They also try to discourage the Chinese from giving us nuclear energy, since nobody else at this stage is cooperating with us. And in terms of the gas pipeline from Iran, because we vitally need gas from somewhere, they are opposed to that. In terms of the gas pipeline from Turkmenistan, which they are supportive, but they're not really doing anything to make it come online. So therefore, I think these two trends that they have, this dichotomy, needs to be addressed so we can move forward together for the sake of Pakistan.
Right. So George, since your area of expertise is the field of nuclear, what is your opinion about nuclear energy? The ambassador just mentioned nuclear energy, and Pakistan unfortunately utilizes only about 2.7% or so of nuclear energy, but there's a vast potential.
Well, there may be a potential, and Pakistan manages very well the nuclear power plant it has, but today the main challenge would be economic. In other words, even if there weren't restrictions in the nuclear suppliers group on cooperating with Pakistan, the reality is that companies build nuclear power plants, and they do it because they get paid to do it. Nuclear power plants cost about $4, $5, $6, $7 billion per plant. So even if there weren't the restrictions that Ambassador Haider rightly talked about, it's only, I think, possible that the Chinese company, which is backed by the government, would think about building nuclear power in Pakistan. I don't think the French or the Japanese or the U.S. companies or the Canadians would build nuclear power plants here, just because they wouldn't. There's no money to be paid. I think the focus right now of the U.S. is more, as Ambassador Haider said, on policy dealing with the software problems and the policy problems in Pakistan, which are the main constraint on current supply. Even if it were possible for somebody to build a nuclear power plant, it'd probably take at least 10 years before that electricity would be available. Whereas the problems are immediate, and there are other ways to deal with the short-term problem.
Right. Michael, I noticed that one of your areas of expertise has been trying to bring Pakistan and India together. And currently, the feeling in Pakistan is that we no longer want to compete with India as an enemy or as an adversary, but we'd like to get closer so that we can reach our true potential. And of course, the ambassador just mentioned that the US has been more supportive towards India for perhaps good reasons, but we look forward not for the sake of India, but for Pakistan's own problems, for some cooperation from the US in the nuclear energy field. How's your feeling on that?
Nuclear energy is the hardest. It's the most expensive, and it takes the longest time to come online. So I tend to look at other sources of energy. And I have, and others have proposed for a while now, that people in Pakistan and in India consider a cooperative development of hydropower in an area that has been a source of great tension and controversy in the past. I'm talking, of course, about the old princely state of Jammu and Kashmir, whose boundaries extend to both countries, whose boundaries are uncertain. But the production of hydropower and its utilization by all peoples can become a source of significant cooperation. In the United States, during the Great Depression, we were energy starved. Our economy was in the dumps. And what we decided to do was to create a regional authority to develop water, power, energy, and economic development. It was called, and is called today, the Tennessee Valley Authority.
Right.
And I would urge people to consider something comparable where the water power lies.
Okay, that's a very interesting thought, and especially because it's a geographical reality that the princely state of Kashmir, which you mentioned, and I'm glad that you did not take sides by calling Azad Kashmir or Jammu Kashmir, because that's where the problem lies. The important thing is that that is the source of most of the water bodies running through Pakistan and also in India, and it needs to be tapped and in an independent way. In 1960, I'm sure you're aware that Pakistan and India signed the Indus Water Treaty, which has held so far, but we definitely need much more cooperation there.
Because water is so precious.
Absolutely.
This could be so controversial. The solution has to be win-win. Everybody has to win. Everybody has to have more electricity for this to work.
Right. And Brigadier Feroz, you've seen both sides of the divide, and you have also worked so hard to be closely associated with Pakistan's nuclear program. Do you see that we have the potential to build more reactors and tap on the nuclear energy? Both these gentlemen, of course, pointed out very rightly that it is expensive, but in the long run, probably it will hold us good.
Well, and as they both very rightly said about the experience of Pakistan so far in managing, has been an impeccable record. But I think the point that they have raised here is that nuclear energy is just a component of the energy requirement of Pakistan, and especially we got to figure out what is immediate and what is long term. I think I don't want to repeat what they have said. Pakistan energy plans, to my knowledge, has always had a component of nuclear energy. For example, the last I remember there was a 2005 plan in which was up till 2030, and the requirement was 8,800 megawatt, the nuclear energy part of the whole energy package. I think I remember it was 163 or something. I now hear that there's an energy plan for 2040, and the nuclear component is now going to be somewhere like 44,000 megawatts.
In terms of percentage, sir, as I mentioned earlier, we are at the moment utilizing 2.4. We want to build it up to about 15%.
15%. So even in order to reach that 15%, it's an exponential increase of power reactors that you would be looking for. And as you just heard, there is a very slow and long-term process. Even if you get the whole. So, people of Pakistan should know the reality that the hopes of nuclear energy is not immediate. That's not going to solve an immediate problem. But nevertheless, it's the experiment, the experiences the Pakistanis have. You can run power reactors very well, but you will have many other constraints because mentioning Pakistanis do not have that privilege that India was given. You still do not have the waiver from the nuclear supplier groups. You will have problems of uranium constraints. You will have problems of getting this nuclear energy. So it's not an easy road ahead. But for the immediate nature of Pakistan, not just hydroelectricity that Michael Crepon mentioned, there are other renewable energy sources, solar energy. You have to tap tremendous amount of resources to really look for the immediate problems of the country.
So, Ambassador, now you've heard all three of our guests from the US, but in 2010, Pakistan made, or rather formulated its energy security policy. Could you share some components from that, sir?
Well, I think like all other countries, our idea, first of all, is that we should be energy secure. And that means these days, of course, is that you have to import energy because we are only producing something like 42% of our petroleum products. And our gas products, gas production is in decline. And by 2017, we will have to be a net importer. So the mix that we require, first of all, is to improve our efficiency as far as possible. Secondly, is to switch from very expensive imported high sulfur fuel oil to gas. For that, we need we need liquefied gas to come in tankers from Qatar or wherever that you can do that. And we've been a little bit slow in putting our jetty and our process forward. So that process has to go forward. And for the gas pipeline, I think it's very important. We have lost at least 15 years in the Turkmen gas pipeline and 3-4 with Iran. Ultimately, since you were talking about India and Pakistan, and Michael was talking about water issues, India and Pakistan, their energy needs are almost the same. I think ours is a bit more than India because they have a lot of coal. So having pipelines from 2 or ultimately 3 pipelines coming in to South Asia, coming in through Pakistan, would be good for both countries, and it would also be a significant confidence building measure in both countries as well.
Right. So George, what is your feeling about other sources of energy which have also been highlighted, especially by Michael?
Well, I want to fully endorse what Ambassador Hyder said and return to it briefly, but in terms of the lowest cost, most immediate way to produce energy, one is to cut down on losses through transmission. Mm-hmm. The other is pricing mechanisms that produce efficiencies because for every unit you save, you don't have to produce more. You also have to deal with the circular debt, which isn't a supply problem. It's not about new electricity. It's about dealing with what you have. But in terms of new supply, which is not the most immediate solution, I think Ambassador Hyder is absolutely right. I mean, gas is going to be the most cost-effective. It's not as environmentally beneficial or attractive as renewables and other things, but it's much better than coal. It's much more affordable than nuclear. So then you get into political security issues having to do with Afghanistan if you needed transit there, and obviously with Iran, where I for a long time have in a sense differed in part with the U.S. government policy, because I believe I would make an exception for a pipeline from Iran through Pakistan to India in the name of international peace and security, which is what the concern is about Iran. Now, I think even if you didn't have the U.S. resisting on the Iran piece, there would be a lot of difficulties in negotiating with the Iranians and with the Indians and with Pakistan. But the payoff would be positive enough that I think it's worthwhile to keep working on that for the day when the sanctions are relieved in Iran and there'd be an understanding of how to get this process moving forward.
Right. So, Michael, you touched upon hydroelectric, and the experience of the United States is outstanding as far as hydroelectricity is concerned. The number of dams is tremendous, especially just in the Colorado state, if you name it. So, how can Pakistan take some leaves out of the US's book, and what kind of cooperation can come here? I mean, we have a history, Mangla Dam, Tarbela.
And I think there's a history of U.S. involvement as well. I am reluctant to enter into this because this is not an area of expertise for me. But I would like to say a little bit more about pipelines. Mm-hmm. Like George, I see value eventually in an Iranian, Pakistani, Indian pipeline. Pakistan is disadvantaged in so many different ways. Energy from Iran is blocked by this method because of the nuclear problem with Iran. I don't see an early resolution to this. Pipelines from Turkmenistan. Afghanistan is not going to be a settled state for a while. So geography, which could be working on Pakistan's behalf as a transmission belt from Central Asia, Iran, to the subcontinent, it's not working for geopolitical reasons. And those geopolitical reasons are going to be with us for a while.
No, but Ambassador Tariq Usman Haider, do you agree with Michael? Can we resolve these geopolitical reasons for the betterment of humanity?
Well, I think everybody will agree that we have to try to do that. I worked on the Turkmen pipeline in the early 90s when there was still Afghanistan was beginning at this problem, and I spent 5 years there. I think the feeling that we had then was that if some work had begun on the pipeline, you know, the mapping, etc., 1/3 of the cost of the pipeline, which is now about $8 billion, would be spent in Afghanistan. And tremendous, they would also be able to take gas from there for their own industrial projects. Later on, they could inject gas from Shibbagan, etc. My belief is that if this gas pipeline project had been started in the mid-90s, it would have shown the Afghans that you can make more from peace than from war. And I still think that holds good today. And therefore, I think the Americans and the Western allies, who are all in favor of the pipeline, if they give it a little bit of a boost, and there is some demonstration effect, not only will you get a pipeline in some time, it will add to Afghanistan's economic stability, provide a revenue stream, and most important, all the factions in Afghanistan, they want economic development there. They want projects, cross projects to go there. You have areas like Colombia and many other areas in the world, even Nigeria, where things are very difficult for pipelines, but they do get through. So I'm not that pessimistic. I think the Americans, they don't have to put their money in, but they can encourage some venture capital out there.
And
can be done.
We're talking about TAPI, sir, as a corollary. There's a fourth player now. Bangladesh has shown its interest in it.
I think that's another thing. The first thing is if we can get it to Pakistan, that's a major achievement. If we can get it to India, so much the better. I mean, it depends on the Indians. We'd like that to be there. And I think the other thing we shouldn't forget is that now it is much more economical even to talk of a pipeline from Qatar. Although in terms of liquefied gas, that is perhaps a more economical project. So there are all these options on the table, and I think one needs to work at them fairly seriously. If it doesn't pay off, it doesn't, but there's no harm in trying.
So, Brigadier, what's your opinion so far?
I think there's a lot of talk in the United States about regional cooperation, trade corridor, reviving the new Silk Roads. But I think Michael made a point that, you know, all these hinge upon stability in Afghanistan. And we can talk about the positive thing, but the fact is that stability is not going to come quickly. I mean, we all hope that it's going to come quickly. And I think Pakistan's foreign policy approach, as I see, is a very positive one now. you're reaching out to Afghanistan, you're reaching out to Delhi, and you're talking about this trade, energy corridors. It's a package that's going to happen, and I think United States will be a very key factor in actually encouraging this corridor as a whole. So
Definitely.
I do see that there's a lot of hope in there, but I think it will be unrealistic to expect that it's going to come around very quickly.
Well, we can keep our fingers crossed. But George, the U.S., of course, we expect it to be a well-wisher for the region. So, and definitely it would like, as all four of you agree, that Afghanistan is the scarlet thread. This stability over there is affecting all the other regions, especially for these energy sectors. So, what other areas can Pakistan and U.S. cooperate?
In Afghanistan or in general?
Starting with Afghanistan, but in general.
The agenda better than I mean, the problem for any progress in Afghanistan in part is related to security. There's a governance problem where I don't think there's much expectation that Pakistan is either the cause of or the solution to the governance problems in Afghanistan. But in terms of security, we all know there's the problem posed by the U.S. presence itself and so on, but there's also the obvious problem posed by the Taliban and others who support them who are practicing violence. And so I think what others are looking to Pakistan to do is help with the Taliban, especially the Quetta Shura and the actors who are based in Pakistan but who are acting through violence within Afghanistan. Now, what the specifics of that cooperation are, people here know better than I, but I think that's the main thing people are looking for.
Right. Michael, as we are drawing to the end of this program, and you were interested to talk about the U.S. presidential elections, do you think a change in presidency is likely to change in the policies as far as the region is concerned?
I do. I think that if Governor Romney is elected, he is likely to lean even more heavily toward India. South Asia has not figured in the presidential campaign so far, but the issues of ballistic missile defense, technology transfers, are likely to come up in a Romney administration given his advisors. I think President Obama has, if he's given a second term, has clearly tried to mend ties with Pakistan in very difficult circumstances.
Very difficult circumstances, and if we are interested in peace in the region, you mean people in Pakistan should hope for Obama to resume or continue?
I don't want to get my personal preference.
I didn't want that. This is just on the lighter side.
But, if it is President Romney, if it is President Obama, they'll be facing the same exact problems in this region. And I don't think there'll be much discontinuity. There'll be more continuity than discontinuity, regardless of who's elected.
Right. Your final comment, sir.
No, I think I'll have a slightly different view on this. I think there's going to be some continuity of thoughts. Pakistan is a very important country. Whether either camp would come to power, this country will remain important to them. If for historic reasons, the United States has invested about 60 years in this country, they weren't going to go away like that.
Your final comment, sir.
Well, I think the point is the relationship between the two countries is really very important for us. It is of quite some importance, at least, to America. And I'm quite sanguine that whoever comes to power in Washington, because of the commonalities involved, they will work out and try to continue a working relationship, and with the objective of trying to improve it.
Right. So viewers, with that we come to the end of this discussion, and all four of our very learned and erudite scholars and panelists were of the opinion that the relationship between Pakistan and US, it may be difficult, it may be trying, but then so are the circumstances which are surrounding us. The important thing is that there is an intent to improve it, not only the relationship, but the focus to make sure that this mass of humanity which resides in South Asia, in Afghanistan, in India, in Iran, in China, should somehow come out of the morass and have a better standard of living. And it can only happen through cooperation, and especially cooperation from major superpowers like the United States. With that, we come to the end of this program. I would like to thank you, George Berkovich. I'd like to thank you, Michael Crepon, Brigadier Feroz, and Ambassador Tariq Osman Haider. Viewers, keep watching us and send us your comments, and hope to see you next week, inshallah. Allah Hafiz.